Good afternoon to you. It is 3:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, former Homeland Security official, immigration official, he's now at the Center for Renewing America. Ken Cuccinelli will be with us. We'll talk about our collapsing border and Joe Biden's new plan to move the border north of Texas. What the heck is going on? Congressman Matt Rosendale will be with us at 4 o'clock today. Julio Rosas joins us at 4:30. We'll get an update on that Minnesota lawmaker who is all of a sudden pro-cop after wanting to disband the police. And then Kurt Schlichter is here at 5 o'clock today with a dose of optimism for our country. Boy, we could use that right now. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The left now finally agreeing that we have a full-blown border crisis on our hands and that immigrants are pouring in everywhere. Illegal immigrants are pouring in everywhere, including to New York. And by the way, I want to point something out. New York is not only receiving illegals from the southern border. New York, for the lefties following along at home, is also a border state. New York has a northern border with Canada, and it's over that border that a lot of illegals are also pouring. There's not much coverage on this issue, but there are a lot of illegal immigrants from all over the planet who keep pouring across the northern border without any meaningful attention on that subject. Today, there's some reporting. Chief Agent Robert Garcia of the Swanton sector, that's from the Northeast United States. He's with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. He's reporting that there have been more than 6,000 apprehensions over the last 11 months. Now, that number, of course, is a lot lower than what we're seeing on the southern border, but they're getting a lot of illegals from all over the place. 76 different countries. 76 different countries pouring across our northern border into states like New Hampshire and Vermont and New York. So it's everywhere. And the United States federal government, in concert with a number of NGOs, which are non-governmental organizations that are funded by the government, so in practice they really are government organizations, are moving illegals all over the place in this country. In fact, the minority of illegals who are being moved by the people of Texas. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has received both scorn and credit, and take your pick, however you want to identify this. But he's only sent a very small percentage of the illegals deeper into the country. And the reason he's doing that is obviously twofold. One, Texas can only take so many. So if they should go elsewhere. If they have to stay in the country because of the horrific decision-making of the Biden administration, then send them somewhere else. That's the governor of Texas's position. The other is, if we're going to fix this, the people who are imposing this horror on the country need to live with the consequences of it. That's the only way this changes, if at all. That's his calculus. And it looks like his calculation was right. Governor Greg Abbott not alone in that. Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida has participated in this as well, moving illegal immigrants to sanctuary districts, cities, places like Martha's Vineyard, certainly places like Chicago, Washington, D.C., and New York City. And that brings us to a piece of audio today that you have to hear. In reaction to New York City Mayor Eric Adams this week, saying that his city is on the precipice of destruction, that New York City will be destroyed by the wave of humanity pouring into it right now. These are the women of The View, and I think, is this right? Are they the most popular daytime talk show in the entire country? I think they are. They bill themselves that way. They could be lying about that too. But let's just posit that millions of people are watching this. And here's the conversation that they were treated to today.
The city we knew we're about to lose.
A little dramatic, isn't it? Seems seems a bit dramatic.
He's got a flair for drama.
Yeah, but he has been critical of the Biden administration for months. He doesn't get support from the government, he's saying. And Republicans love this, you know, because this is right up their alley for somebody like a New York sanctuary city to be complaining about migrant problems.
She doesn't even know what to do with it. She's being smacked in the face by reality, and she's sitting there going, oh, he's kind of being dramatic. And you can hear her beef with it is that it is bad for Democrat messaging. Well, this isn't good. Republicans might get a political advantage out of this. They've been saying this is a problem, and now you have a Democrat saying it, and that'll be a permission slip for them to think that they were right. It's unreal. It's unreal. Joy Behar, who, didn't she work for CNN at one point? Ana Navarro, also, you can find her on the lefty networks, to include right there on ABC on The View, and here's what she had to say.
But frankly, you know, I think we need to find, and we've dealt with this before. I lived in Miami. I was an immigrant in Miami in the 80s. You'll remember when we had the Mariel boat lift. Yes. 125,000 Cubans came in a matter of 6 months. It puts tremendous stress on a city, on a community, on the social services. They need to be resettled elsewhere.
They need to spread out. We're this massive country.
Yeah, and a Democrat president ended that boat lift, the Jimmy Carter. and so Ana Navarro is now saying, we've got to stop these people from getting into our country. Are you hearing this? Is anyone hearing this? This is The View. The View's perspective on this now. Now that it's affecting their Tony uptown community, is that we have to stop this. We have to stop people from coming in.
Matter of 6 months. It puts tremendous stress on a city, on a community, on the social services. They need to be resettled elsewhere.
They need to be out. We're this massive country.
Well, and it's only going to get worse with global warming and climate change because people can't live in certain parts of this world.
Oh, my gosh. And, of course, you know, Joy Behar's brain is collapsing at the end. She's like, what do I say? She reaches into the word cloud. Climate change. Joy, calm down. We're talking about immigration right now. Illegal immigration right now. And so Ana Navarro's solution is the one that most lefties share, most elite lefties share, but are not dumb enough to say out loud. But Ana Navarro, you know, she is dumb enough to say it out loud. She's saying that, oh, well, why are they coming to my community? Can't they live somewhere else? This is a big country. It's a big country that I have no interest in visiting. I don't want to be in most of these flyover states. There's plenty of space where I don't have to look at these people. Why can't we send them there? That's the Ana Navarro solution. She is speaking. She's the spirit animal for the people of Martha's Vineyard. As soon as the illegals arrived, what did they do? They deported everybody. They said, oh, my goodness, it is so nice to meet you. Do you speak English in your country? Welcome. Oh, right this way. We have a perfect spot for you. And it was a boat. They put them on a boat, and they sent them away. It's garbage. One of them was like, I'll keep 2 of them. I need help at the house. It was a little horse trading, and then that was it. It was over. It wasn't about, we're a sanctuary. Can you imagine the huevos on these people to declare Martha's Vineyard a sanctuary city? They did. It's a sanctuary. They announced it a long time ago because they knew that it would never really come into action, or at least they suspected it would never come into action. They're like, we're a sanctuary city. We take care of every illegal who shows up on our shores. Well, what would be the circumstances that would happen? What we discovered is when Ron DeSantis sent a plane load. that was really the only chance of something like that happening. Beyond that, no, that's not happening. And so now you have the women of The View freaking out about this and saying all these very deeply bigoted things. We've got to send them somewhere else. They can't live here. How am I supposed to get my coffee in the morning and not stare at foreign nationals? Meanwhile, the New York Times thinks that the real story from all of this is that Republicans are evil. Yeah, that their actual takeaway from our collapsing borders that Democrats are now screeching about is that Republicans are bad people. Headline today. GOP gets the Democratic border crisis it wanted. I'm sorry, what was that? Do you know any Republican in your life? Are you even aware of a Republican leader? Republican, I mean, by that I mean a lawmaker who actually wanted a border crisis? Is it their deepest desire is that our border collapses? That's what they want? GOP gets the Democratic border crisis it wanted, says the New York Times in yet another brazen act of dishonesty in the old gray lady. They say when Governor Greg Abbott of Texas began sending migrants and asylum seekers from the southwestern frontier to New York, Washington, and Chicago, he vowed to bring the border to the Democratic cities he said were naively dismissing its costs. A year later, the migrant waves he helped set in motion have put northern sanctuary cities increasingly on edge, their budgets stretched, their communities strained, and a border crisis that has animated Republican politics for years is now dividing the Democratic Party. Humanitarian impulses are crashing into desperate resource constraints, and once loyal Democratic allies have reluctantly joined Republicans to train their fire on President Biden. Eric Adams, the mayor of the nation's largest city, declared this week that without a federal bailout and clamp down at the border, swelling migration will destroy New York City. The nation's second largest city, Los Angeles, has promised to sue Mr. Abbott, and the liberal mayor of the third largest city, Chicago, began pleading last month for the White House to step in. Let me point out the way that these Democrats want the White House to step in, and it is not for an actual, quote, clamp down at the border. That's not what they want. What they want is money. What all of these mayors are asking for right now is give me cash. Give me cash. I want federal cash to flow into my city. That's what I want right now. Now, if they were serious about getting control of the illegal immigration crisis that's overwhelming their cities, they'd work with ICE. They would deport illegals. They would answer detainer requests. If an illegal comes into custody in the United States and law enforcement asks, you have to ask, and establishes that they're actually not here legally, they're not a citizen of the United States, run it by ICE, establish if they're illegal, whatever it takes, but get them out of the country. This makes all the sense in the world. And for the bleeding hearts, if you're concerned that this is going to, you know, that you don't want to hurt illegal communities, or as you say, undocumented, the way you hurt, quote, undocumented communities is allowing violent criminals to go back into them. So for whatever illegals are in the country now, you think they want the violent people back in their communities? Come on. It's crazy. But that's not what they're doing. They're asking for money. And let me put that differently. What they're asking is for the American people to subsidize their lawbreaking, for refusing to follow federal law, for refusing to bring some security to our country, for refusing to help us establish our sovereignty again. They want you to subsidize that criminality. Just send us more money. And in the end, if the Biden administration responds in kind, and if Democrats in Congress respond in kind, and even if Republicans, if they get involved in this, respond in kind, what it means is that the states, the cities who are breaking the law the most will get the most money. Is that, you following the logic here? If you are not, the more illegals you welcome into your, quote, sanctuary city, and the more you need the federal government to bail you out because of that decision, the more American taxpayers are going to be subsidizing lawbreaking. That's the system that they're trying to set up here. And nobody should fall for it. Of course, the media is going to, because they believe in this, by and large. But the answer to this is actually to secure the border, and actually to enforce immigration law in the United States, actually to deport people who deserve it. It's amazing what we're seeing. More in a moment on the New York Times, illegal immigration, Greg Abbott. I've got so much. And I've got your calls coming in as well. 888-630-9625. So the New York Times thinks the big story is that Republicans are getting a political victory because the border is collapsing. What a stupid assessment here. Republicans pounce. Meanwhile, they have a separate piece this week that says, actually, kind of shockingly, they're honest about this. They say Greg Abbott, Ron DeSantis haven't forced any of these illegals to go to Dem cities, these Democrat cities. They've been offered, quote, offered free passage, the New York Times admits, multiple times throughout the piece. And in fact, one of the illegals tells the New York Times, quote, I feel fortunate that the governor put me on a bus to Washington. Well, yeah. The whole point was, hey, do you want to get on one of these buses? One's going to New York City, one's going to Chicago, one's going to Washington, D.C. Ooh, Washington, D.C.? Yeah, me. I'd like to go there. That's where my family is. Okay, hop on board. Free ride. That's what's happening. For real. Let's get Milton from Fairfax in here on line 1. Milton, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, sir.
Hey, Vince, thanks for taking my call. Yeah, I was born in Uvalde, grew up in Southwest Texas. And if Joe Biden abandons the Rio Grande, cuts and runs, and allows the cartels to come into Texas, my question for him is how is he going to secure the border between Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana? I mean, this is so stupid that if you were to try to quantify it, it would look like the national debt would be that big of a number.
It really is. And you almost look at it like a battlefield. This is a retreat on the part of the Biden administration. They decided to set a new battle line, pull their forces back. We're going to go north of Texas. And what you're talking about is this Biden administration plan, according to the LA Times, to establish that all these illegals who are pouring in need to, quote, remain in Texas. So we went from the Trump era, remain in Mexico while your asylum claim is litigated, to now Biden wants to impose remain in Texas. So foreign nationals just use it as a big old rest stop on the way into the United States.
Yeah, and they're not going to stay there. I mean, you give them a court date, they never show up. Nobody knows where they are. So, I mean, you can just walk across a fence and be in New Mexico or Oklahoma. So,
yes.
It's foolish.
Just get on the highway. You don't have to even cross a fence to get through. It's the United States. You just go from state to state, and there will be nobody to stop you. It's like the whole idea. It's just a gigantic scam. They'll all stay in Texas.
Right. Thanks,
Milton. Thank you. Appreciate the call. Coming up, we're going to talk to a guy who knows a lot about our immigration system. Ken Cuccinelli is here with some thoughts on Joe Biden's effort to move our southern border. It's ahead. Good afternoon. 3:35 here on News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Congressman Matt Rosendale is here at 4 o'clock. From Town Hall, we'll be joined by Julio Rosas at 4:30. And then Kurt Schlichter joins us at 5 o'clock with a dose of optimism. Always nice to get that. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. We are now at the point where the Biden administration is floating remain in Texas as its solution to the border crisis. That's right. They want to move America's southern border from the south of Texas to the north of Texas. How much sense, if any, does that make? Ken Cuccinelli has worked in the immigration business in the government. He's a senior fellow for Homeland Security and Immigration at the Center for Renewing America and a former deputy secretary of Homeland Security under President Trump. Ken, great to have you back with us, sir.
Yeah, good to be with you as always.
What do you make of the dam breaking, first and foremost, among these Democrats who are now screeching about how their cities are being destroyed by illegal foreign nationals?
I just feel terrible for them all, and I wish we could move all of their city right to the border. They could all be Brownsville. And, I mean, New York City is getting a taste of what it's like for Brownsville and has been for years, and they're screaming that Eric Adams, I have no idea how to solve this. That's a near exact quote. Yeah, well, I got an idea for you. Close the border.
Yes.
But instead of squawking at Joe Biden, he screams at Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis for shipping illegals to New York City. And the fact of the matter is that exercise has demonstrated the massive hypocrisy of all these sanctuary city folks.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Isn't this an amazing and unfortunate case study in leftism? Because You get all this virtue signaling. We're the good people. We would never turn away mankind from our city. We're a sanctuary city. And then they encourage the destruction of other people's communities. And then when it finally arrives, at their doorstep, they're all of a sudden freaking out. Like, we didn't plan on this. I'm sorry. I thought you said you were welcoming to everybody.
Right. Well, we saw this most spectacularly when DeSantis sent those 2 busloads or plane loads up to Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
So 50 illegals. And Massachusetts, by the way, Republican governor at the time, called out 125 National Guardsmen to deal with 50 illegals that landed for fun on Martha's Vineyard. Oh my goodness!
I know, and I was just saying a moment ago. I love that Martha's Vineyard considers itself a sanctuary community. That as if that's going to be some sort of frequent occurrence. That foreign nationals are going to be like swimming across to Martha's Vineyard on a routine basis.
Well, but then when it actually happens, they are unmasked as what they really are, and it's hypocritical. They're ibbies in your backyard. I don't say that. In your backyard. And,
yes.
And that's what's been going on. It took Texas 2 years to finally start repelling people at the border. That began in May of this year. And that combined with several states, we've talked about Texas and Florida, shipping illegals to these sanctuary cities has changed the debate. Now, I would point out to your listeners that Democrat voters have opposed Joe Biden's immigration policies within months of him assuming office. Within months. It was very quick. And he's still underwater with Democrat voters on immigration, which leads to the question, well, then why the heck is he doing all this? And it's because the truly radical erase our border left has control of this administration. And Texas, of course, is paying a dear price. New Mexico, Arizona, and California are as well. But with Democrat leadership, they squash their complaints, though Kristen Sinema hasn't done so lately because she's up for election. And you'll remember Senator Mark Kelly, when he was up for election, that was the only time he complained about it. You haven't heard a peep out of him since.
Mm-hmm.
Leftist. And so it will be interesting. I think the outcry on the Remain in Texas program is going to be so thorough and outrageous that they aren't going to be able to sustain this. And if they try to, they're going to get slaughtered in court by Texas.
Okay, so let's discuss this. The LA Times has a piece that they posted late yesterday saying that the Biden administration is considering, quote, Remain in Texas to hold these illegal immigrant families in the Lone Star State until their asylum claims are fully litigated. This doesn't make sense for a number of reasons. One of them aren't the asylum claims taking upwards of a decade at this point? So what, Texas is going to take the world in, and then they just have to park there?
Yeah, they're not moving those cases along at all, and of course they're trying to figure out every way they can to let people in. And as you and I know, and as was revealed rather starkly over the last 5 or 10 years, the asylum claim notion is a complete canard.
Yes.
It came into being because we were dealing with the communist bloc, the tragedy of not taking Jews before World War II in this country, and our American reaction to that. Now it's being abused by economic migrants who are intentionally clogging the system. They don't want a conclusion. They don't want a decision because they're not actually asylees. They're not running from anything other than they'd like to upgrade their opportunities. And I understand that, but we have a legal process for doing that. I was honored to swear many of those new citizens in who played by the rules, and nobody likes a cheater.
And is this even constitutional? I guess that's an important question, right? I mean, that the federal government
to you and me,
the federal government will force an undue burden on a single state of the union, and then the rest of the states don't have to endure that? Like, is that constitutional?
So first of all, your and my interstate travel is constitutionally protected. We saw this in race cases in the 60s. And it's established for all of us. The question is, do people who enter the country illegally do they have all the same rights? I personally don't believe they should, but the courts acknowledge an awful lot of them. So if that's the case, how do you stop them from traveling interstate?
Yes.
That's a good question.
But I want to know about
Texas will defeat it.
Yes, but I want to understand the constitutional rights of Texans here, because they're the ones who are being subjected to an undue burden of the world's masses being dropped into their state. And so how does that work? Is that allowed?
So Texas will claim that as the harm to Texans. They'll talk about all the different costs, and Texas has become very good at quantifying these things, and it'll prove the harm to Texas. There still has to be a law violated separate from the harm,
right?
But I don't think that's going to be hard to do when you're treating Texas and Texans separately from everybody else.
Yes. And back to the issue of asylum claims that are so disproportionately fraudulent. I mean, what percentage of claims need to be fraudulent before the government will admit that they are a part of a scam?
It's a good question. When we ran the Remain in Mexico program, not the Remain in Texas program, the Remain in Mexico program, the granting of asylum claims was, as I recall, somewhere around 1%. Now, mind you, the exact same career immigration officers decided those cases who were deciding ordinary asylum cases where the grant rates were around 25%. So that Remain in Mexico program exposed those flows of illegals as not asylees, and that demonstrated that it was being used for fraud, just as a way to stay in the United States. And the best way to fix that, don't let them stay in the United States.
Right. And if you're, but if you know that data, and you're allowing 99% of the cases to stay in the United States while they're considered, and you know that they're fraudulent based on all of the historical data, then that should be impeachable. That you are aiding and abetting a criminal enterprise. The numbers are overwhelming.
Well, Mayorkas has been aiding and abetting a criminal enterprise for a while. I mean, they're not running a border security operation. They're running an invasion facilitation operation.
Human trafficking, yes.
I believe Mayorkas is already subject to impeachment if the Congress chose to do so. And he's lied to Congress too, so you've got that too. But this is an extraordinary situation, and part of what amazes me is they keep coming up with new ways to make it worse.
Right. Yes, they do. These mayors who are all claiming that they're asking for help now, I think it's always useful to listen to the specifics of what they're asking for. And it turns out they all want money. The New York City mayor, Eric Adams, the Chicago mayor, Muriel Bowser, they all want cash money from federal taxpayers. I haven't heard any of them say that they need to end their sanctuary city policies or work with ICE or honor detainer requests or deport illegals who are here in the country causing mayhem.
Yeah.
What do you make? But the idea is these Democrats. Do you detect sincerity in their pleas at all?
In the plea, sure, they love money. And look, New York is struggling mightily. You've undoubtedly seen, and many of the people listening to us have seen, footage of town meetings in Chicago, in New York, where 95% Democrat precincts are screaming bloody murder over the sanctuary policies because of what it's doing to their neighborhood.
Right.
And these are not, gated communities. These are folks who already have enough concerns, and now the virtue signaling of their radical liberal whack jobs they've elected, and they have elected them, you do get what you vote for, is having outrageously bad consequences. Their schools are now being turned into immigrant hotels, and their school system itself is being overwhelmed now very suddenly and very severely.
Yes.
And in ways they can't handle. And citizens are responding, and citizens who, have been voting candidly, just judging by the precinct returns, for the radical left-wing Democrats that are doing this to them. I'd love to see AOC show up at one of these meetings in her own district and explain why everybody screaming at her is wrong. Good luck with that.
No, she's been fully ingested into the establishment of that party. She will only do things that look good for Biden, and speaking up on behalf of constituents who are suffering is not one of those things. The issues with politics here, I'd love for your insight on this too, because you're very familiar with this. I get the sense, even today, that Democrat strategists think that this is not going to be a big deal come Election Day next year. That their voters don't care that much, and it's not really going to affect the general election votes. What do you think?
Well, first of all, it'll be a little different depending where you are in the country. There is no way of getting around this issue in the Arizona Senate race, for example. And all of those border areas that the Democrats used to hold seats in, Republicans are gradually making headway, whether it's congressional seats, mayorships, at every level of government, Republicans are pressing ahead. And it isn't just this issue. When you throw in, and they may not sound connected, but they are connected, the transgender type issues, the portion of the Hispanic community that has viewed itself as Democrat, I believe, has now seen a Democrat Party that they say, whoa, this is crazy. They've literally gone too far, and they are, and just the normalcy of an ordinary Republican position, when you combine it with an immigration position and people like rule of law, play by the rules approach, they don't want to see a system where people can jump the line. That is just not playing out, despite Democrat, radical, liberal Democrats' desire for that to be popular. It is not. It is not. And so I think you're going to see in Hispanic states, and by that I mean with a significant Hispanic population, because the Hispanic vote is swinging GOP, those states are going to be moving into the GOP column if there are good candidates running. That is a precondition to have good candidates running. But it's going to make a big difference. And it isn't just one issue. It's the way this issue signals insanity to so many in the electorate who are culturally conservative but have voted Democratic in the past. We saw this when Ronald Reagan arose, right? Over 40 years ago. Cultural conservative union members, for instance, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Ohio, who came over from the Democrat Party to vote for, in Texas, to vote for Ronald Reagan, North Carolina. This does happen every so often. And if the Republican Party would get its crap together and set its feet firmly as the party of working families and ordinary people, they would dominate this country's politics for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
But, the Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy's of the world are more beholden to donors rather than ordinary people. I think they all need to wake up and do what I do first thing every morning now and listen to rich men north of Richmond. That's how I start my day every day. And if you wake up fighting those people, doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you're going to make America a better place.
Yeah, I've heard that song so much lately. Sometimes I find myself singing it by accident, just like humming it along at home. Ken Cuccinelli, thank you very much. Always good to talk to you, sir. Thank you for your assessment today. All right. Let's take a call. We've got Chip calling in from Alexandria, line 1. Chip, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hey, Chip, hello? Can you hear me? Yes, sir. Go for it. You're on the air.
Yes, Vince. So the one thing that I wanted to bring up is I don't think the Democrats are worried about the immigration problem. They didn't worry about Joe Biden campaigning from the basement. The secret is community organizing. I didn't know what that was until after Obama left office, but they've got the ability to turn out 100% of the people registered in a district with 100% of the votes going for their candidate, regardless of what happens, and whether they're legitimate or fraudulent doesn't make any difference to them. And that's why I think the fix is kind of in, and what we need is to be very vigilant about vote integrity.
Yes. We need to be vigilant. I agree with you. We need to be vigilant about the integrity of our vote. But it shouldn't be construed as the conclusion that the election doesn't matter. That would be a horrific conclusion to draw because it still does. It just has to be conducted in, as you point out, in an honorable and an honest way. And that takes a lot of vigilance ahead of time. On this issue of what's going on right now and why they don't care about the headlines here. And I think you also, one of the things you indicated to our call screener is that you think the media is in on this too. I agree with you. I totally agree with you.
Absolutely.
But the way in which the media is in on this is interesting because on this particular front, Chip, you're looking as the media is now openly airing some of this criticism of Biden. And I believe that that's intentional. I believe that this is scene setting for getting rid of Biden and replacing him with a candidate with far less baggage and a much lower propensity to fall down a flight of stairs. And at this moment, something super interesting is happening. And to add to the evidence for that, Gavin Newsom just did an interview with Chuck Todd. Apparently it's gonna air this weekend, but we have the audio today. They just released some of it. And he was asked about whether or not he's going to run. And apparently he's now saying that Kamala Harris is next up. Take a listen to this.
Filing deadlines haven't passed. President Biden doesn't run. Why shouldn't we consider you a likely candidate?
Well, I think the vice president is naturally the one lined up, and the filing deadlines are quickly coming to pass. And I think we need to move past this notion that he's not going to run. President Biden is going to run.
The filing deadlines are a moot point. This is up to the DNC what they do. They're going to rig the system. And this whole thing, he says she is naturally positioned to be next up. That doesn't mean Gavin Newsom is completely ruling himself out here.
And looking forward to getting him reelected. I think there's been so much wallowing in the last few months and hand-wringing in this respect. But we're gearing up for the campaign. We're looking forward to it.
But you hear these calls privately. What do you tell these donors who are wallowing in this?
Time to move on. Let's go.
And am I supposed to interpret that comment about the vice president that if for some reason the president chose not to run at this point,
well, that's
everybody rallies around her?
It's the Biden-Harris administration. Maybe I'm a little old-fashioned.
Yeah,
maybe I'm a little old-fashioned about presidents and vice presidents. I was a lieutenant governor, so I'm a little subjective.
Did you notice that he didn't actually answer the question? The way it's being interpreted right now is that he's not going to run in 2024, but this is the greasiest guy in America. He just said, well, she would be the natural next up. What kind of answer is that? Some funny business is going on here. Gavin Newsom trying to quiet the speculation for now. Won't be surprised if he makes a grasp for the ring. Could be happening. Coming up, we're going to be joined by Matt Rosendale. The congressman's with us, and we'll get into American energy, the Biden administration at war against that as well.